Good morning, everyone. It's very nice to see you all this morning. I'm John Mann, Director of Education for Lakeside, and we're fortunate that Mark Holland has joined us for Celebrate Ohio Week and to share his knowledge of the 25th President, William McKinley. This morning's session is Stellar Interpretations, a unique presidential library and historical society. In this presentation, Mark will share details of the William McKinley Presidential Library and Museum. This one-of-a-kind presidential library incorporates a history museum, interactive science center, planetarium, and research library. As a reminder, this evening is our first keynote speaker of the year in Hoover Auditorium at 7:30. And if you did sign up for the Hayes Home field trip, which is tomorrow morning, we'll meet at the center in Fremont at 9:15 a.m. As always, I ask if you please turn off your cell phone ringers and help me in welcoming Mark Holland.
Well, thank you very much. Is everybody able to hear me? Okay. My youth pastor in the UCC, when I was that big, said, "They will forgive you if you make a noise. They will forgive you if you drop something during your speech. They will forgive you, blah, 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 blah. They won't forgive you if you can't be heard." Here I am. And I'm so glad somebody showed up. This is great. Thank you. Miss Mabel Elizabeth Dorchester was living in New York at the time of the Pan American Exhibition of 1901. She was called to duty at the emergency room located on the exhibition grounds. The President of the United States had been shot. The President was transported in the first motorized ambulance in Buffalo, New York. Nurse Dorchester was on duty when President McKinley was brought to the emergency room. Operating room where the President received medical care for his gunshot wounds. The recovery room after the surgery. Miss Mabel Elizabeth Dorchester earned a check of $100 for her service and being part of the medical staff that cared for President McKinley. Miss Dorchester is in the back row turning to her left. February 10th, 2024, McKinley Museum was transformed into a fictional Britain. And the halls of McKinley became the halls of Hogwarts for Harry Potter Day. The McKinley Presidential Library and Museum and the McKinley National Memorial are both administered by the Stark County Historical Society in Canton, Ohio. Our current building was first opened in 1963 and underwent a major expansion in the early 1980s. In the fall of 1963, Canton, Ohio's public square became Central Plaza. The Professional Football Hall of Fame opened its doors. And the Stark County History Center opened to a throng of 6,000 people on Sunday, August 4th, 1963. In a week's time, the center had 11,292 people from 40 U.S. states and 11 foreign countries, including England, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, Norway, Peru, Canada, the Philippines, New Zealand, what is now Sri Lanka, and West Africa. The Stark County Story is a permanent exhibition telling stories to illustrate the concepts of transportation, innovation, culture, and lifestyle that spans 2 centuries. It is divided into 2 galleries, the 19th and the 20th centuries. In 2023, the museum hosted 10,147 adults and students for field trips, motor coach trips, and special needs groups. Stark County became the most important manufacturing center for agricultural implements in the world in the 1860s. 5 young men started Ball, Altman, and Company. They moved their business from Greentown in Stark County to Canton, Ohio. They moved in December of 1851 before the railroad cut its way through Canton in February of 1852. Altman Taylor threshing machine produced in Mansfield, Ohio. The 5 young men faced many adversities, but pressed on, and by 1865, they were selling their agricultural equipment nationally, and in 1871, were shipping their mowers and reapers from Little Canton, Ohio, out to the world. Stark County supported the United States and the Union cause during the Civil War. They supplied 11 regiments and 1 independent battery, Ohio Light Artillery. A regiment was assigned a number and contained 1,000 men who were divided into 10 companies, each indicated by a letter. William McKinley, age 18, around the time he was mustered in to the United States Army at Poland, Ohio, near Youngstown. He was assigned to the 23rd OVI, Ohio Volunteer Infantry. He would serve under another future president, Rutherford B. Hayes. McKinley earned the rank of Brevet Major of Volunteers by President Lincoln, March 13, 1865, quote, "For gallant and meritorious service during the campaign in West Virginia and the Shenandoah Valley," end quote. William McKinley was mustered out of the United States Army on July 26, 1865. In the late 1880s, the Canton Board of Trade caught the attention of John C. Duber. Duber was the founder of a watch case company in Newport, Kentucky, after he purchased the Hamden Company of Springfield, Massachusetts, which exclusively made the watch movements. He made it known if any city could give him $100,000 as a gift, he would move his 2 companies to that city. With their families, the employees would be 1,500 to 2,000 people. With the families, it would be 7,500 to 10,000. Charles A. Dougherty of the Canton Board of Trade was a dentist who had to give up his practice for health reasons. Mr. Dougherty rolled up his sleeves and raised the $100,000 in 3 months. Ground was broken for the 2 companies on October 14, 1886. With the 2 companies came the employees from Newport, Kentucky and Springfield, Massachusetts. These 2 companies under John C. Duber, in one account, became responsible for helping to double the size of Canton's population. The Newport Watch Case Factory, before it left Kentucky, was producing 15,000 watch cases a day. we are proud to help preserve this beautiful clockworks, which told the time for the entire campus of both Duber Case and Hamden Works companies. It is an E. Howard clock tower, clock movement number 2, made in Boston, Massachusetts, circa 1886. The clock was in this tower from 1887 to 1961. The transitional piano, an unusual artifact in our collection, can be viewed in our Victorian house. It was introduced first at the 1851 World's Fair in London's Crystal Palace. The first American transitional piano was built in 1858 by A. de Kuhn of New York City. The instrument in our museum is only one of 3 known originals. The others are in California's Disneyland and Akron's Stan Hewitt Hall, and is the most perfect of the 3. Our piano was rebuilt and restored sometime in the mid-1960s. Through this door are the exhibits representing the 20th century. The Timken Roller Bearing Company was founded by Henry Timken in 1898 in St. Louis. Mr. Timken was in business only 3 years when he moved to Canton to expand his business. By 1902, he was ready to make roller bearings in his new Canton factory. Henry Timken was soon employing thousands of workers and turning out thousands of tapered bearings a day. Henry Ford heard the bearings would increase the life of the front tires of his car, front wheels of his car. And he put in orders for the Model T. The 4 Aces, or number 111, was commissioned by the Timken Roller Bearing Company and was the first steam locomotive to be completely equipped with Timken's tapered roller bearings. With the 4 Aces in a Union Station in Chicago, the company asked 3 young ladies, all in high heels, to pull the 355-ton engine. They easily moved it down the tracks. Yay, Timken. Here is Beulah, the laughing lady, who stood at the front of the ride called Laugh in the Dark, an amusement park known as Myers Lake Park that was northwest of Canton proper. She was made in Stark County by the Old King Coal Company. Myers Lake was a place for affluent youth to hold outings. A campground, destination for many company picnics, amusement park, and resort. It was active from 1869 to 1979, pardon me. In 1960, from January 9th to the 11th, crowds lined up in front of the Canton Memorial Auditorium on North Market Avenue. They wanted to see the exhibit known as 150 Years of Stark County History, co-sponsored by the Stark County Historical Society and the City of Canton. The exhibit boasted 1,300 photographs would be displayed. The History Society celebrated its 15th year in operation, and the city had celebrated its sesquicentennial in 1955. Our memberships as of June 2024 is 1,743 members of the Stark County Historical Society. These members support our missions to share with the global community the history of Stark County, science to develop new technologies, solve practical problems, and make informed decisions and preserve and promote the legacy of William McKinley and his family. There are two entrances to this gallery with large doors salvaged from the Altman Harder Mansion. These are Cornelius Altman's dining room doors. Welcome to the McKinley Gallery, which houses and exhibits the largest collection of memorabilia relating to President McKinley and his family. There are many more artifacts and storage areas in the museum. The gallery is divided into 4 sections. Artifacts from McKinley's law and congressional career. This is a revolving bookcase invented and manufactured by John Danner in Canton, Ohio. When President McKinley moved to Washington, he brought along one of these handy pieces of furniture. John Danner's invention was taken all the way to the White House. The middle section represents McKinley's multiple residences in Canton. From roughly 1876 to 1889, the McKinleys, William and Ida, stayed at the Saxton House that would become the Barber House. See that little gal over there in the door? From 1891 to 1892, the couple lived in the Hereford House next to the Stark County Courthouse, only 1 block from Canton's public square. The McKinley family, including William McKinley Sr., Nancy Allison, Helen, and Abner. Anna, James, William, and his bride, Ida. All the McKinley family shown here lived in this house at one time or another at 131 West Tuscarora Street at Shorb Avenue Northwest, Canton, Ohio. The eyes of the world would soon be fixed to this little cottage on this little corner, 723 North Market Avenue, Canton, Ohio. This house became the focal point of McKinley's 1896 presidential campaign. The press would dub the Front Porch Campaign. The third section represents and holds artifacts from the McKinley's White House. Our curator mirrors the way Ida and William hung the same image of Katie in their bedroom in the White House. This is Catherine, the McKinley's first daughter, named after her maternal grandmother, Catherine Kate DeWalt Saxton. Mother and father called their little girl Katie. Another feature of the White House, while the McKinleys occupied it, is the lovely stained glass Tiffany screen. In 1882, Louis Comfort Tiffany created this glass screen to separate the entrance hall from the cross hall. The glass screen featured topaz, ruby, and amethyst jewels set in the glass alongside 4 eagles and a shield with the initials US. The Cross Hall in the White House in March of 2019. At your back is a bank of display cases that make up a timeline of the life of William McKinley. This gallery, now over 60 years old, has seen many changes. The representation of President and First Lady Ida McKinley have changed a time or two over the years as well. Outside the McKinley Gallery, between the doors, is a mural showing the delegates from Illinois during the presidential campaign of 1896. In 2015, this rocker was brought in by people claiming to be related to William McKinley. It took a little bit of searching and researching to find this photograph of the president sitting in a rocker on his front porch in Canton, Ohio. By scanning the archival photograph on the left at a high resolution, both myself and the curator at the time, who is now the executive director, agreed our newly acquired rocker was a match with the rocker in which the president was sitting. The Street of Shops is one of our most popular exhibits. It began in 1805 with the establishment of Canton, Ohio, through the 1940s with the model train display. In what is now Plain Township in Stark County, a man named Henry Wursler brought his family to this new state of Ohio. This cabin represents their first residence. The family together built a cabin, a barn, a church, and a grist mill. The fireplace is fully functional, and many over-the-hearth dinners have been served in this area of the museum. The Danner-Miller Company succeeded the Kimball Wholesale Grocery Company. The interior of this general store is filled with hundreds of artifacts that have been donated through the years. The drugstore and dentist, John Saxton's printing shop. John Saxton started the Ohio Repository in 1815. The name was changed to the Canton Repository, and many other variations of this same title through the years. Mr. Saxton is the grandfather of First Lady Ida Saxton McKinley. The fire station holds a fire pumper from 1888. It is named for a prominent citizen of Canton, Daniel Worley. Before removing to Canton, Professor Worley, a graduate of Pennsylvania College at Gettysburg, taught mathematics and natural philosophy at Capital University in Columbus, Ohio. Our prefabricated filling station. our creepy girl that scares all the kids. The town doctor and the blacksmith. The origins of our science center have humble beginnings. This was a science area featuring exhibits on the human body when the museum opened in 1963. Dr. Ralph Ramsayer tests one of the science exhibits on the left, and years later, a troop of Girl Scouts learned from the same figure. The other exhibits to educate our patrons in science were the Hall of Science and Industry. When the History Center opened in 1963, there were 26 commercial businesses that sponsored 26 exhibits, showing off what they did best, including Sugardale Provision Company, East Ohio Gas Company, Alfred Nichols Bakery Incorporated, Stark County Milk Dealers, Tyson Bearing Company, Maslin Steel Castings, Alliance Machine Company, and many more. The pendulum in the museum's main lobby was a must-see for thousands of school children on their field trips and many patrons from around the world. In January of 1988, the Stark County Historical Society was approved for a capital campaign to raise money for a children's science museum. Since the early 1980s, there had been considerable thought towards such a facility in the Canton area. Early plans were under development with a Children's Museum Committee. The capital campaign goal for the new venture was set at $1.2 million. By August 1988, the Society was using the term Discover World. Discover World was one of the only 30 children's science centers in the United States and provided a premier educational facility for children and their families in northeastern Ohio. The electric shows are daily in the summer and tour season. They comprise of the Van de Graaff, Jacob's Ladder, and the Tesla coil. These exhibits teach static electricity and how alternating current works. Ecology Island houses live animals. Ecology Island has grown to include an interactive watershed exhibit and an observation beehive. It teaches the importance of conservation of wildlife, and all of our animals are rescued wildlife. This mastodon tusk is now preserved in a glass case so it won't be touched by patrons. We're the first people to do that, by the way, in the museum. Never mind. Alice the Allosaurus greets you at the entrance of Discover World. She roars by a recording of a tiger at anyone who comes into her habitat. This is Mosasaur, specimen donated by the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. This is the American mastodon, discovered in Canton, Ohio. It is one of the most complete specimens found in Ohio, being 87% complete. Here is the geology area where you can learn about fossils, rocks, and minerals naturally occurring in Ohio. Fascination Station opened in 2013 with many hands-on activities. This is a favorite of the patrons and the museum staff. Fascination Station and the name Discover World are trademarked. The Tornado and the Pixel Pegboard. This room uses luminescent paint and special lighting to produce one's shadow on the wall. It is a very popular exhibit for kids of all ages. Fascination Station encompasses a variety of topics in physics, and the science department continues to evolve the interactive displays housed here. Due to the nature of Discover World, we have staff members who have diverse backgrounds in science. Currently, we have a director of science, 1 full-time, 3 part-time people on our staff. We have 5 volunteers who are docents for the many guided tours we conduct every year. During the first years of the museum, one of the permanent exhibits was the Hall of Industry. It featured exhibits of local industries such as the Hoover Sweeper Company, the Timken Company, Diebold Safe and Lock, and many more. This same space is now known as the Keller Gallery. It is used for our temporary exhibitions that changes 2 to 3 times a year. The Keller family continues to support our temporary exhibition program. We host traveling exhibits from the Smithsonian, like Righting the Wrong, which opened on Saturday, July 3rd, 2021. We borrow exhibitions from other museums and produce exhibitions in-house based on our permanent collection. This exhibit, A Secret Gift, was produced in-house in 2013 by Kimberly Kenny, curator, now executive director, McKinley Presidential Library and Museum. Ted Gupp, a Canton native, now makes his home in New England. He wrote A Secret Gift, How One Man's Kindness and a Treasure Trove of Letters Reveals the Hidden History of the Great Depression. The Hoover Price Planetarium was built into the original 1963 building. Planetariums typically have a dome protruding from the roof of its host. This design encapsulated the dome in the building so it would not compete or distract from the dome of the McKinley Presidential Library, McKinley National Memorial. We still operate the original Spitz optical mechanical analog system that was installed in 1963. Our system is so unique because the consultant, Richard Emmons, who set up the planetarium, drilled an additional 1,500 stars into our star ball. We have over 3,200 stars in our star field. These are the actual controls they use. Our audiences still love the stars. We also have constellation projectors that we use to show the actual Greek mythology pictures. We have a popular fundraiser called Soup at 6. In May of 2022, we had the pleasure of meeting and hearing the first-person account of Artemis, NASA returns to the moon. Left to right, Susie Dills, planetarium director, and Nicole Smith, NASA engineer. Ms. Smith is the project manager of all of the Orion testing at the Space Environments Complex at NASA Glenn Research Center's Plum Brook Station, Sandusky, Ohio. The Ramsey Research Library, as it was called when it first opened in 1963, was most likely a reference library for the Stark County Historical Society and the staff of the Stark County History Center. E.T. Heald, one of the founders of the County Historical Society in 1946, the Society's historian and treasurer. Mr. Heald is the author of the 4-volume compendium called The Stark County Story that was published by our Historical Society. The information started from scripts E.T. Heald wrote and read on a program called The Good Neighbors that broadcast from our local AM radio station, WHBC. He then turns to William McKinley and writes an unpublished manuscript in 12 volumes. This is the only site in the world you can find these special writings on President McKinley. We are fortunate to have had 4 of the 12 volumes digitized at the Digital Hub in the main branch of the Cleveland Public Library. Opening one of these volumes on a random page reveals many facts of how William McKinley and Stark County were molded together. Atlee Palmerine was a politician and lawyer from Ohio. He served as Lieutenant Governor of Ohio for a few months in 1911, and then represented Ohio in the United States Senate from 1911 to 1923. Another noteworthy person in this short passage is Annie George, who was accused of murdering President McKinley's only brother-in-law, George Saxton. Annie George was put on trial in the Stark County Court and was acquitted. Dr. Ralph Ramseyer, OBGYN, has the honor of the library named after him. He, like Heald, was very influential in starting the society and opening this history center. The Ramseyer Research Center and the McKinley Presidential Library and Museum have seen many changes, improvements, and leadership through the years. The library started with a volunteer staff. Later, it was open just 3 afternoons a week. The Research Center is now open 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 4. It is staffed by 1 archivist and currently 17 volunteers who weekly work over a 4-day, weekly over a 4-day work week. Well, okay, next one. Our volunteers, that's one of them you forgive. Our volunteers catalog, digitize, preserve, and organize newly acquired artifacts through donations. The Research Center answers an average of 110 Stark County research requests and an average of 80 to 85 McKinley research requests per year. We have people ask us if we can verify whether they are related to William McKinley. Here, Roberta, a relative of McKinley's oldest brother, through brother David McKinley. Here in 2014, she is accomplishing the mission her mother wanted to make, to see her cousin's tomb in Canton, Ohio. The center has minimal storage and has been equipped with 3 compact storage systems. The Presidential Library and the Ramsey Research Center is frequently transformed into a classroom to teach history, preservation, and conservation. We have an intern program for undergrads, and we do our best to be flexible to their schedule and academic needs. The Research Center has hosted 26 interns since 2014. We seek the threads of the past and present to inspire others in their quests. This is why we do what we do. People travel great distances, make great sacrifices, and spend vast amounts of time and money searching for the answers to their questions. People from all over the world call, visit, write to the archive with questions about their relatives who lived in Stark County, to find a business that was once here, or to view the vast photograph collection. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a question. We can help you. In early fall of 2021, the McKinley bust that stands in front of our building underwent restoration. President McKinley died on September 14th in Buffalo, New York. Sculptor Edward Ludwig Albert Posch was born in Copenhagen, Denmark, and immigrated with his family to Hartford, Connecticut as a small child. In 1889, he joined with sculptor James G.C. Hamilton at the Smith Granite Company in Westerly, Rhode Island. Mr. Hamilton is known to Cantonians as the stone sculptor of the beautiful historic pediment above the entrance of the present Stark County Courthouse in Canton, Ohio. Edward Posch's most ambitious work, created at the Smith Grant Company, is the George Washington Memorial 1889 to 1891 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Posch is also credited with creating at least 7 of the numerous monuments in the Gettysburg National Military Park in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. According to an article that appeared in the Columbus Dispatch newspaper in 1923, upon William McKinley's death on September 14, 1901, a New York sculptor, Edward L.A. Posch, immediately wired McKinley's secretary, Mr. George B. Corderoux. He was requesting permission to make a death mask of the dead president. With Mrs. Ida McKinley's permission, the request was granted, and Posch took the first train that he could catch, reaching Buffalo in time to make the mask in the morning after the death. Posch had made a clay model from the plaster of Paris impression, and later, in early 1902, Posch was commissioned by the Postal Union Workers of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to make this bronze casting bust of the McKinley death mask affixed to a granite pedestal to be displayed inside the post office in Philadelphia. This commission was paid for by postal employees who wished to honor President McKinley for his pioneering work in civil service. At one point in time, the bust was shipped to Canton and placed at the northwest corner of Tuscarora Street, the Lincoln Highway, and Elgin Avenue. Elgin is the main thoroughfare of the McKinley National Memorial when approaching from the south. The McKinley bust is now gracing the front walk of the McKinley Presidential Library Museum. Our volunteers provide thousands and thousands of sweat equity hours of work every year. This year, we had 50 to 55 volunteers working in our museum that gave us 5,475 hours. There are many more hours given in the background by those not seeking attention or those who stay anonymous. This year, we honored 3 volunteers who served 20 years and 2 volunteers who have celebrated 30 years of service. Our volunteers sit at desks and count change, address envelopes for correspondence, welcome visitors on special museum days and special events, pass out Halloween candy, show children and adults how to make paper carnations, sweep floors, rake leaves, research projects, write stories, and most anything else that we would ask of them. Our volunteers are invaluable, and we could not do what we do if it was not for them. Our executive director, Kim Kenny. Left to right, our maintenance manager, volunteer coordinator, and our 2024 recipient of the McKinley Award. Glen Oak High School in Plain Local Schools is not far from our museum. This is our JTC Job Training Coordination, class of 2024. This class comes to the museum through the regular school year each Monday to help with maintenance work supervised by our maintenance manager. And it gives the students the opportunity to learn on the job skills they would not learn in a regular classroom. Every Monday, our museum becomes a classroom for the most valuable outreach. Our gift shop also had humble beginnings. This space, in the case these ladies are standing by, constituted the entire shop. Around the time our science area, Discover World, was created, the shop was moved and expanded. The museum shop has undergone many changes and improvements through the years, and it is still located where it was placed in the early 1990s. Today, our museum shop is breaking and setting new records of sales in 1 year. I didn't want you to get away without seeing our snake tree. And those don't last. Those are popular. We turn to the last and most important monument to our 25th president, William McKinley. In this solemn edifice lies the family of 4, resting eternally. Father, William McKinley. Mother, Ida Saxton McKinley. Daughter, Katie McKinley. And daughter, baby Ida, named after her mommy. Now, I wasn't going to do this, but I think we hold the plans. We hold at least probably 110 to 120 sheets of the plans to the monument, and they are the original. And one of them says, and I'm not going to be able to get this right, but one of them says, these leaves, which if you're standing down there, if you're in that car, you won't see them. You have to go way out. But these are laurel, symbolizing love conquering death. But they also have these posts. They took the time to have posts let into the granite so that they could be 3D. Lots of work. It's the real deal.
The McKinley National Memorial, in its stunning beauty and grandiosity, is a reflection of the immense grief that caused this building to rise.
He was the most popular president ever to die in office.
In September of 1901, Americans are shocked when President William McKinley is shot by an anarchist in Buffalo at the World's Fair known as the Pan American Exposition. The mourning is especially intense in his hometown of Canton, Ohio, which becomes the natural choice for a site for a unique national memorial.
We're so fortunate that it sits right along the highway, and people, buzzing by on I-77 have the chance to really check it out, and it's a beacon. And people often say, we just hopped off the highway because we had to see what this was.
It's very different from many other presidential grave sites. So it's not inside a cemetery like many of them are, and it's not in kind of a monument collection. It's here by itself. A lot of people don't necessarily think of it as a tomb. So we have weddings that take place here. People have all kinds of photo shoots for senior pictures. It's a community icon.
Architect Harold Van Buren McGonigal of New York City designs the monument with its famous 108 steps. Flying overhead, the design tells the 25th president's story. The dome forms the center of a cross representing the martyred president. That cross leads to the handle of a sword representing his roles as Civil War veteran and commander-in-chief. However, the blade of the sword is much different today.
What used to be here at this spot was a spectacular, what was called a long water. There were 5 pools that descended down to a reflecting pool here at the bottom where I'm standing, which gave a beautiful reflection of the monument.
Historian Richard Haldy has fond memories of the long water before 1951, when the state of Ohio, which owned the memorial for 30 years, ordered it covered due to problems maintaining it. Haldy hopes that someday the long water can be restored. What remains unchanged is the stunning beauty of the dome, made of pink Milford granite. Massive bronze doors secure the entrance to the mausoleum. Inside, you are surrounded by beautiful marble. On one wall, you read the names of the first couple's 2 very young daughters, Katie and Ida, who died from sickness and were later moved to the memorial. The President and First Lady Ida McKinley, who were publicly devoted to each other, grew even closer in their grief and appropriately lie together in death.
It's often referred to as 2 sarcophagi. It's really only one large unit made out of a single block of beautiful marble. Some of the decorations on it include the gold panel of laurel, which represents love conquering death. Below that you can see the heads of lions posed in an angry pose because they are protecting the bodies of the president and his wife.
4 eagles also protect the tomb. Encircling the mausoleum's interior is a quote from the president's last speech in Buffalo, prioritizing peace, which is visually depicted in the striking statue on the steps.
Let us ever remember that our interest is in concord, not conflict, and that our real eminence rests in the victories of peace, not those of war. President William McKinley, September 5th, 1901.
At the top of the chamber is a red, white, and blue skylight with 45 stars, the number of states in the Union at the time of the president's death. You might think that this is a window to the outside, but it is actually the underside of a dome within a dome, designed to protect from weather and leaks.
I'm almost up.
Archivist Mark Holland takes us between the interior and exterior walls, where you are surrounded by some of the 2 million bricks that support the monument.
We just get a great appreciation for them being up and down these ladders, and these ladders are probably a luxury compared to how they got up and down. And I'm between the inner dome and the outer dome.
The destination is a small room at the top. Here you see the flip side of the stained glass. A final ladder leads to a small hatch where you can look out more than 100 feet above the ground. The monument is testament to lost arts of construction and craftsmanship. Kent State architecture professor Elwin Robison and Steve Kuhn, who works in historic restoration, see the original vision on paper.
Back then, it would have been done ink on linen.
In the very detailed hand-drawn plans at the Presidential Library. Each stone is destined for a specific level of the monument, to be built one layer at a time, like a Lego. This labor-intensive approach would not happen today.
In today's world, you would probably switch to a precast concrete instead of stone. And what you would do is you would cast big panels, bring them in by a crane, plop them into position, bolt them up.
You know, almost like a Disney World kind of thing. You know, you go to Disney World, that's a castle, but it's really not like a castle that you would see over in Europe. It's more to kind of fool and trick you and give you the image of that's what they want, but this is the real deal.
We had heavy equipment that could actually move these heavy stones. But in his day, they just had horses and sheer brute force to move them. This is a really impressive building. He built buildings all over the country, but I'm sure this one was the biggest he ever did.
Joe Robertson admires the work of his grandfather, Davy Robertson, who was the foreman.
Right there, in the white coveralls.
Oh, wow.
The stone arrives to the site by rail. Davy's crew constructs a massive derrick with a boom arm. Using hand cranks, they lift each stone into place.
Once the stone was in place, they'd have bars, they'd have steel bars, and they would push it and they would move it just to get it in the right spot. And if the stone is not in place, then the other stones further down the line are not going to fit right. So everything's got to be perfect. He had been injured a lot of times on different jobs. At one point, a piece of stone fell and actually cut off a couple of toes. So, it was dangerous, hard work, and that's what these men did.
The crew is made up of diverse nationalities. Former slaves from the Southeast are said to arrive out of a deep respect for the deceased president, while some criticize McKinley for not doing more to help Black Americans suffering at the time. These workers praise his work as a Union soldier and commander-in-chief.
He advocated Black soldiers fighting in the Spanish-American War. Was it political expediency? Probably. But from the Black community's point of view, here's a slight opening, because it's always been about proving ourselves worthy of inclusion in a larger American society.
2 years of hard work pay off on Dedication Day in September of 1907. Thousands celebrate in Canton. President Theodore Roosevelt's speech blows away on the windy day. Over the years, the memorial, like any other building, faces challenges. Visitors often do not know that it is privately owned by the Stark County Historical Society and receives no federal funds for its upkeep.
We still need help from local people to make sure that we can keep this running well and everything that should be done to the president's resting place.
The president and his family's story, symbolized in this beautiful building, have inspired visitors for more than 100 years and counting.
It's up on that big mountain, you know, and you can see the city and you see the world. It's like, this is yours. What are you going to do with it now?
That's my grandma on the left. She was born in 1900. And I will return you all safe and sound where we all began. Lakeside, Ohio, July 4th, 1892. Governor McKinley gave a non-political address to an auditorium of 5,000 people. Governor McKinley spoke to the Baptist Young People's Assembly. When he rose to begin, he received a standing ovation. It was several minutes before he could begin to speak. There were frequent references from the crowd of McKinley being the next president. Governor McKinley and General Hayes fought together during the War of the Rebellion. Hayes had a cottage in Lakeside that still stands. The 23rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry held reunions in Lakeside. Thank you.
There was a Senator McKinley from Illinois about the same time. Were they any relation?
I don't know. Being west of Ohio, it's more likely, but I don't know for sure. We've never known that, no. That's a good question.
I'm sure the Science Center is great for school kids. Just wondering, do you have a display in there on the science of climate change?
The question was, the Discover World, do you have an exhibit there on climate change? And you know what, I'm no science expert, but I believe we do. I think it's right next door to the watershed. When I go down to the science, I get really, really dumb.
So, if I'm correct, they only had 2 children who both passed away, so they have no direct descendants?
That's correct. Do you want to know what happened to them? The question was, they only had 2 daughters, so they had no direct descendants. They had Katie, and she lived to be 3 1/2. And they had baby Ida. Baby Ida had cholera infantum, which is not the cholera that we think of right away, not with the water, but it's the temperature of the milk that they may have been giving her. She only lasted 4 months, 4 months and 22 days. Katie, so she passed. Katie was 3 1/2, and she must have, we have no idea what she contracted, but we guess it's a childhood, the mumps or chicken pox or something that weakened her heart. And some people say, it's on her death certificate. Well, we didn't have death certificates back then. This was 1875. And so the state of Ohio didn't require death certificates until, I think, 1907, 1908. So we have this large Stark County book that we call the death book. It's all the deaths in Stark County from about 1872 to 1907.
How much of the construction of this monument would McKinley's wife seen?
Oh, how much of the construction of the monument would McKinley's wife, Ida, had seen? The account is that she was there every day watching the construction. She was probably, she had a driver, and she had it in a buggy, in a buggy. And it probably was under 2 miles to go there. But the story is that she was there every day for the construction. Unfortunately, she died just months before it was dedicated. It was completed and dedicated. It was supposed to be done, you know how that goes. We're going to have it done by August. We're going to have it. The account is, and they wanted to have it done by August. It was done by September, and it was dedicated at the end of September. There are accounts that they are still putting in all of the trees and the grass, and they're just coming right up to the minute, right up to the day. Oh, and on that same subject, after William's death, before the construction, after William's death, and it was a stop during the construction, there are accounts that Mrs. McKinley stopped at it was the receiving vault, and it's called Wirtz Receiving Vault of Westland Cemetery that's right behind our museum. And the story was that she was there daily, and she had a little rocker in there, and she liked to crochet, and she would go in there and crochet with her husband.
I was born in Canton in 1948 and grew up in that neighborhood, and I remember 99 steps walking up. So probably the 108 would be there were a few more steps to actually get in the mausoleum. And then it is connected to Canton City Parks. It's a beautiful park and beautiful walkway, and it's tied into the Hall of Fame. You can go under the expressway, Interstate 77, and actually walk up to the Hall of Fame. So it's a really nice area in the city of Canton.
I grew up going there, and I've always called it our little piece of Washington.
In the library, can you check out books or other literature there? Or is it strictly to be used only on premises?
His question was, in the library, can you check out books, or is it on a revolving system, or can you take things out? The answer is no. We are a research library, and because of that, we get in trouble a lot. We don't get into trouble, but trouble comes to us. You know the public library. The public library is going to be open from noon to 4 today on Sunday. So you want to go get a book, or you want to go ask a question. The library people, no offense, but they're not sitting there doing nothing, but they are waiting for you to come in. We aren't. They have a lot of stuff to do, we have a lot of stuff. It's just a completely and total difference in environment. And like I say, People want to come in and they want to get a book. People want to come in and they wanted to use the computer, that kind of stuff. So no, it is not. It is not. And I think I told you in here, our two missions on the history side are William McKinley, the legacy of William McKinley, and our Stark County Historical Society. They wanted to be in 1946-ish, they wanted to be a Canton Historical Society. And we do really focus a lot on Canton. And there was a commissioner that stood up, and he said, no, he was Stark County Commissioner. He said, no, you want to be a county historical society. And they said, why? Because you will get money from the state. So we don't now. We don't now. And if anybody's interested, there was a committee that helped build the monument, and they handed it over with a large sum of money to take care of it to the state in 1943. Then in 1974, the state hands it over to the Stark County Historical Society. So that, and now we are the owners. But Cheryl, you were talking about pennies. There were a lot of different things that helped to fund it. There was a chain letter. There was a whole campaign of chain letters, and we have those chain letters from all over. But also, this committee did not ask for the money for the United States. They said, you are giving this. Each state had to give an amount of money based on their population. So it's very, very much the McKinley National Memorial.
In Canton, how many homes are still there? You know, like the Saxton House?
Yes.
How many of the ones are still there?
Just the Saxton House. I have to stop and think for a second, but I don't, if I lose one. But you saw those houses. The Saxton House, it was built by the DeWalts, and it had, the cool thing is then it was, excuse me, it went from DeWalt to Saxton to Barber, and Barber was Mary Ida's sister, married a Barber. So they lived there with their million kids. But it's had 3 different lives. It's been worked over 3 times in its life, but then the Canton lore is that there was a gentleman, and he's affluent. He owns a lot of buildings in Canton right now. He literally stopped the wrecking ball from destroying the Saxton House. It was literally coming down the street. And then I could be lying if I'm saying that I gave him a blank check, but I don't know. He probably offered him plenty, whatever it was. But the only other thing I want to say about the house is that house has always been owned by the females of those all the way down. And how do we know that? Because we have the land abstract, so we can see all those exchanges. And as far as it's an atrocity. We do not have William McKinley's house where he campaigned on the front porch. The Stark County District Library is there now. And we have been writing forever a book about what happened to this house. It lived from about 1866 to 1935. It was moved once, and before the library, there was a hospital there. It was the house and the hospital and then the library. It was empty for a while. What did I want to do? Oh, right now, the working title is the Fall of the House of McKinley. We want to tell that story. And also, William McKinley Sr.'s house, taken down and put a gas station there. We do it good.
Is there any consideration of having that part of the National Park Service? Because there was donation from around the country there that.
Right. The question is there any interest in the National Park Service coming in? And I say, and I know, all I say is from my experience, no. We have always, from the time I started, I started in 2008, and from the time I started, the executive director loved to say that we have an idea in the morning, and by the afternoon and evening, we are doing it. We're not going through all those hoops. But at the same time, I would dream of it being National Park Service, and because of the neighborhood, it's not the best, it would be completely fenced in. And you would have, the problem with fencing it in and charging just $1 to go in, it's the McKinley National Memorial, and I can't tell you who said it, but it is for the nation. It's not, it probably would go against what this person said if we charged for it.
I was just curious when he mentioned the question about the Saxton House. What happened to that huge complex that was the Duber watch case manufacturer? I'm sure they're not making watch cases there any longer.
No. What happened to the Duberhampton watch case and works buildings? Well, 1958, no, I'll back up. They started in 1887 in Canton, and they had, like so many other stories, they had a good business, a son with a good business head and not. And the one with the good business head died early. So this one, the other one, he takes over when Dad dies, about 1915. And the short story is that it makes it, the actual working and the factory working, to about 1927. Then all of the equipment, there's a deal made and they pay money. All the equipment is on, I can't name how many cars of the train. All that equipment is put on the cars and shipped over to Russia, and for them to make Russian watches. And just from a watch enthusiast, not me, but somebody else said, these were really nice watches. They were kind of middle ground. But the Russian watch was just a watch. If it gave the time, great. It didn't have to have my name on it. So, what happened to the buildings? 1958. Route 77, going north and south, cuts through, and they have a plan to cut through, but not go to avoid the city. Out in the country, don't take minimal down. Nope, they had to go right through the city. They had to take a whole park down, and they had to take many houses down. And so the first one, the first building was taken away for that. Then they said, we're going to save this one. It's going to be a, Hilton or whatever. But no, it was taken down too, and along with the clock tower. That's a crazy story too, but I don't want to bore you. Anyone else?
No. Thank you very much, Mark.
You're very welcome. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.